Hello, friends. I'm creating a series of videos about the conversion of an old church in Missouri into a home. And I thought it would be important to give you the backstory. So that's what this video is all about. Um, I'm Matt. I was raised on a dairy farm in Arizona and was pretty much just a farmer's boy, but always loath to get my hands dirty. I wasn't a farm boy at heart. I enjoyed the cattle, I enjoyed the other animals, but I just wasn't the kind to be bucking hay. I mean, when I graduated high school, I was 5'10" and 125 pounds. Um, yeah. So my skills were in the intellectual area, and I knew it. Um, my career, for my career, I chose to go into the Foreign Service of the United States, the diplomatic service with the State Department. That's the U.S. Department of State for people who are a little confused about that. It took me all around the world. I was with them for about 30 years, 32 years from end to end with a lapse that I don't need to explain now in the middle. But it kind of turned me into a world savvy, world traveled polyglot. I'm fluent in Spanish. I'm pretty darn good in French. I can converse in Arabic to a limited extent, and I have studied Russian and German, Greek and Hebrew, and I can read Italian and French and a lot of Latin. Um, so when someone at my 20th high school reunion asked me to Mesa, Arizona, I was surprised by my own answer, and it was, I don't know that I can. The person I've become doesn't have a place in Mesa, Arizona. And the truth of that was borne out later. I tried returning to Mesa for a time and it just didn't work financially. So I retired in 2018 after spending 16 years overseas, after taking my family there. A couple of my children were born overseas. Oh, I failed to mention, I'm a family man. And I like to tell the story about my family in the following way, because the numbers will eventually shock you. I wanted to have a daughter. I wanted to have that special relationship of a father to his daughter. Well, my first four children were not daughters. My first four were sons. And finally, then I had a daughter. And sadly, when she was about 3 years old, that marriage ended with me having the five children in my home. And a couple of years later, I remarried to a woman who was raising a boy on her own, and that gave me five sons and a daughter. You can kind of see where this is going. That good woman who took that household into her care said, I've only given birth to one son. I thought I would have more. And that's why there are the other three sons, numbers 6 and 7 and 8. And together, she and I adopted a son. So that's 9 sons and my daughter. And that's why I didn't tell you right up front. That's kind of scary. 4 of mine by my first wife, sons that is, 1 by her previous marriage, and his father was African American. And the son, and then 3 together by my second marriage, and my good daughter by my first marriage. And then the son that we adopted is African. So we are a his and hers blended international multiracial family. And I am, as I said, a world traveled polyglot. So can I just go back to my farming kind of roots and live a simple life? Would that I could, but I am not able, as Gilbert and Sullivan might say. As I was retiring in 2018, I thought I would be retiring to Southwest Missouri, to a home that we had bought. But owing to sadly soured domestic relations, my wife who had the care of our informed me that they had decided that I would not be joining them in retirement and that I needed to find a new home and that I needed to find a new place to live. So that's how I ended up living with my daughter for a year. And then I was able to find a place of my own where I lived for a year. But by that time, I had not rejoined the Foreign Service because I'd retired from them, but they use retirees like me to fill staffing gaps because when you're an embassy, you can't just call the local temp agency and say, send us somebody. It has to be somebody who's familiar with an embassy and the hierarchy and the bureaucracy and can get a security clearance and carry a diplomatic passport. So I signed up for the program whereby I could do gigs. And last year, 2021, I spent a couple of months in Burundi and several months in Tanzania, and I've since spent another couple of months in Tanzania. And that's a different story. I just want to let you know that I was kind of, it was during my first gig to Tanzania that one of my sons decided to move to Utah near where I was living independently. And he informed me that he was moving to a house that had a suite where I could live. And so I sold my house. There were other things going on in relation to the Africa assignment where I wanted to free up some cash. And I moved in with that son. And then after about a year of that, and now we're getting up to about May of this year, he was sounding like he wanted to move into a different house because he was renting and wanted to buy. And I was heading off to another assignment in Africa and not feeling like I really had, no offense to him, because he was a wonderful host, he and his family, his wife, and several of my grandchildren. I felt like I needed to be independent again, let them do what they would do. I wanted a place of my own. So I started looking for places and I thought, well, where should it be? And I knew that the housing market in Utah was too hot and too expensive. And I thought, well, how about I get myself back to near my adolescent sons in Missouri? Not too close to be an annoyance, to perturb bad relations, which had improved, become peaceable. And so I was looking at Zillow, the popular realty site, for places in Missouri and looking at something I might afford, which wasn't much because the money that I had from selling my place in Utah had actually mostly been eaten up by a project that I was undertaking in Africa. Well, to my astonishment, I saw a listing on Zillow for a place for sale on a third of an acre for $25,000. Those of you who are watching in an international zone might not appreciate that that's about the price of a car, not the price of a home, which would be well over 100,000. Only this wasn't a home. This was a church. It had been a church. It was a beautiful thing. And I am quite a historian and a genealogist and was very interested in it for that reason. Now, it was not in Southwest Missouri near my family. It was in Northwest Missouri. And I started looking around the area to see what attachment I might be able to have to it. It's 15 miles practically to the nearest town of more than 1,000. It was completely rural, completely abandoned. No one had used the church building for more than 7 years. The electrical supply had been disconnected. The water supply had been turned off. No one had lived in it. Some things had been left behind. I could see from the listing, the real estate listing, but it was not a home. It had no bedrooms. It was a large chapel, 25 feet by 40 feet, big enough to seat about 100 people. And it had what I call the social area at the back, which was for the Sunday school and for congregational meals. And it had a couple of classrooms. The piano had been left behind, the organ had left behind. Well, anyway, I was fascinated. I thought $25,000 is the asking price. I might be able to buy it for less. And even though I was going overseas soon to another gig in Tanzania, I started the process of buying it. And to my surprise and delight, while I was in Tanzania, while I was in Dar es Salaam working for the US Department of State, I found that I had bought myself a church in Northwest Missouri. I didn't know if the roof was solid. I didn't know if the walls were solid. I didn't know if the foundation was solid. I didn't know what state it was in. I'd never visited the building. I had sent some messages to the realtor. I'd taken a hard look at the 7 photos that were available in the real estate listing. And I had been up and down that highway on Google Earth and Google Maps 100 times. But I was thrilled. And when I returned from Tanzania in early June of this year, 2022, I put my life together to then go to Missouri. And it was on June 19th of this year, now 1 month ago, that I rolled into little Santa Rosa, Missouri, and for the first time opened the door and smelled the stale air and saw the deep dust and discovered to my delight that, as they say in the business, the bones were good. The foundation was solid. It still didn't have electricity. It was full of spiders and animal droppings, but it didn't have any animals bigger than a spider. No mice, no rats, no squirrels, no skunks, no foxes, no raccoons, but the raccoons had obviously lived there for years. It had been outfitted for a time, for some years, as a local musical venue for like hoedowns, country music. It was called the Santa Rosa Opry. And by the way, I got to say, why is the name Santa Rosa, a Hispanic name, active in Missouri? Well, it was because during the gold rush, the California gold rush of 1849 and onward, someone from not California had gone there. I believe they were from Kentucky. And when they had gotten their money from the gold rush, they retreated eastward and ended up in Northwest Missouri and stopped at a little place and named it Santa Rosa after the town they had last been in California. I've learned all of this history, and I'll share a lot of this history in the videos that will come with this series. And I'll share with you what you will see in this series is me doing my thing, my do-it-yourself sort of stuff, because I still don't have much money. I might get partners or investors, maybe not. But now, a month later, I have cleaned the place out, swept many times, mopped many times, polished some things, gotten the electricity reestablished, gotten the water turned back on, and got an AC in the window and a mini fridge for my cold things, and I have moved in. Now, technically, right now, obviously, I'm not in it. I am now in Southwest Missouri with one of my sons for a time, because frequently I will be called away, and I am at leisure to do that. So I'm now down in Southwest Missouri, and sometimes I might go back to Africa. I don't know. I might do other travels. I might meet with family in Arizona, my clan, or back in Utah where some others live. I might travel just to travel. But for the moment, Santa Rosa is on my mind and in my heart, and I just wanted to give you this backstory of why this former diplomat and globe-trotting polyglot linguist and a historian and genealogist is fixing up an old church in Missouri, and happy to be doing so. So follow the adventure, and thanks for watching.